Welcome to this demonstration of Cohesity's Enterprise Protection and Reliability solution for VMware Cloud Foundation. In this demo, I'm going to demonstrate how to successfully protect and recover the full management stack of a VMware Cloud Foundation solution in under 20 minutes. All of this while leveraging some of the unique capabilities and technologies produced and provided by Cohesity's data platform. Let's take a look.
So let me explain here real quick before we get into the demonstration here. So what I'm showing you here is the actual SDDC manager, which is the sort of brains of the VMware Cloud Foundation. To the right here, you'll see a clock at the top, which will actually time how long it takes to bring back the infrastructure. And below, you see all of these different IP addresses. And basically what's happening here is that I'm actually continuously pinging every component within the actual stack. So all the vCenters, the vCenter servers, the PSCs, every component that is part of that, you'll see it here that is being pinged. So you can actually see that what I'm doing here is actually not some sort of movie magic. I am going to speed through some of the recordings of the actual demo so that you can actually, I don't keep you all waiting here for the actual time it takes to do this. But the important thing is to look at the top clock, which obviously that's the time that'll keep, and you'll see how quickly this stuff is being achieved and recovered. So let me begin. And let's start by kind of demonstrating and showing you the components. So here, obviously, this is the actually workload domain. So I'm showing you the infrastructure, the components that are part of that VMware Cloud Foundation stack. Now we're looking at the management domain. And basically, this is just basically demonstrating and showing the hosts that are part of this particular cluster right now, which could be ranged from 4 to 8. We'll go to vCenter. Once I go to vCenter here, you can actually see all of the components for that particular management stack that have already been deployed and are actually running. These are the components that I'm actually pinging to the side here. There's the vSAN data store, and you can see that everything that is deployed is actually stored on the vSAN data store. And here are the actual networks that are actually configured, which are all based on running NSX. Now, when I look at the Cohesity UI, let's look at what we configured to deliver this sort of solution. So we look at the policy manager, obviously everything being done from a policy framework. There are two jobs. Here's what we call the VCF authentication stack. The VCF authentication stack consists of vCenter, PSCs, because they're critical to the rest of the components actually being able to come up online correctly. So if you look at the actual VMs that are part there, they're dynamically going to be protected. And to actually do the same thing, we actually look at the rest of the components. We create a different protection job for the other components, and here you'll be able to list them. It's the same process, the same policy, but here you can actually see that the number of virtual machines that are part of that particular job at this point in time is much different. Now, keep in mind that these virtual machines are not necessarily small. They're very big. They could be terabytes of capacity, hundreds of gigs, which is where this becomes a real value, being able to recover things in an effective way. Now, from a Cohesity perspective, obviously everything's done from a centralized UI. You're able to see that. Now I'm going to go directly to a host where I'm going to sort of instantiate or initiate the failure. And this is a host where most of those components are currently running at this point in time. Here you can see to the right side the actual name of the VMs of the components of virtual appliances that are running. And I'm going to initiate a failure from the back. And what you see here is that everything that's going red, all the VMs are actually failing and being completely deleted from the host and from the data store, from the vSAN data store. So obviously you can very quickly here identify that all of these appliances that are listed in red is because they're no longer pingable. They're completely failed, and they're actually have been deleted from the cluster itself. Right? The only few things you see here is the actual NSX controllers, which weren't deleted part of that process. So here I'm checking to see that vCenter was gone. Here, so I'm looking at the SDDC manager, and I'm going to refresh it so that you can actually identify that it's gone, and here you can see that. Now, before I start the job, here's where the time comes in. So to restart the job, to restore it, you see here I'm going to restore the authentication stack. I choose the pointing time of those specific, of the latest data backup that was run, and I'm going to hit finish. But before I hit finish, I'm going to choose the source. So remember, I deleted the vCenter server. So I'm going to do this restore directly to an ESX host, select the actual network that I need, and I'm going to hit finish. So once I hit finish, the one thing you have to look at now is actually look at the clock. And I'm going to start the clock. And as you can see here, we're going to time how long it takes to actually bring back the infrastructure as it's going on particularly there. So you'll see that in a matter of seconds here, some of the VMs will start coming back up, but we're actually recovering and testing for application availability because, being able to restore the VMs for them to be pingable, but also it's a matter of the services being available when actually the applications are usable again. And you'll see that because I have that continuous ping going, you'll be able to see that once the VMs and the services are actually running and they're pingable, they become green all over again. Now, the beauty about the way this works is that if you can imagine the time that it takes to recover individual VMs that are in the hundreds or 100 or 40, 50, even terabytes size VM, it takes a pretty long time, right? That's something that Cohesity is able to avoid because of this technology and the efficiency of the snapshot technology that we use, which is called Snaptree. That makes a big difference because it's a way in which we actually can eliminate some of the constraints that happen in terms of bringing back virtual machines. And we do that in sync. We do that simultaneously. So not one at a time, not serialized, but all in parallel. So now, for example, you can very quickly see here that the vCenter server is back up. The PSC2 is back up. And when I say back up, meaning pingable. So within a minute and 20 seconds, you're able to see that that's actually already functioning. Now you can also see and trace that the PSC2, now the management stack of the infrastructure, the authentication stack is actually coming back. Obviously, we all know that in the versions prior to vCenter 6.5, vCenter service actually took a little bit longer to come up. So this is why I'm speeding up the process here, so you can actually see once the vCenter server service is actually up and running, then what I'm going to do is then basically go through the same process and launch very quickly the second portion of the infrastructure, which will then recover VROPs, log insight, and all the rest of the components. Overall, what you're seeing here is a full recovery of that management stack, and you'll experience that, which will happen under 20 minutes. And within itself, you could use many of those tools that are available today for availability, and it's not very easy to achieve this unless you have some very expensive solutions and some things implemented to sort of achieve that level of recoverability as part of the infrastructure. So that's something that is, when you think about the impact of what this capability actually delivers, is pretty impressive, because we're talking about now being able to recover the infrastructure. And here we got to the 9 minutes. I'm going to refresh the interface. You can see that I'm going to log into the vSphere client. And these sort of capabilities is pretty impressive and very valuable in the sense of, if I can recover my infrastructure, the components of the infrastructure that control the rest of the environment, now I have the ability to define a point in time or an SLA for recovering applications. Now you can see here that part of the infrastructure is running. So I log into the vCenter server. Now what I'm going to do here is finally execute the second recovery job, which is the rest of the infrastructure, which composes of the rest of the components, which will be log insight, all those things that are here. And you can see here quickly that some of those VMs are even almost a terabyte, right? Ranging from 200, 300, and actually even larger capacity here. So now, by simply doing these very quick steps, you're able to sort of start the job, and you'll see that before we hit around, well below the 20-minute mark, you'll see that the entire infrastructure, the management stack, will be available and ready to go within this particular scenario. Now, that's all done possible because of the way our snapshots work. The fact that we can do point-in-time recovery and have infinite sort of number of snapshots, and the efficiency on how that works. So imagine that you're able to introduce this sort of capability to your infrastructure whenever there's a potential failure of this magnitude. And keep in mind, this is not based on replication. This is a secondary storage platform, VMware Cloud Foundation being one, running on virtual SAN, Cohesity running on its own cluster, and now being able to instantiate and bring up all those virtual machines instantaneously to the point where they're now easily accessible. And you can see how now everything's starting to come back up, all the different components, VROPs, log insight, and the rest. And you're able to actually get the infrastructure back from a complete failure within, I would say, 15 minutes or so, right? Below 20 minutes, which is pretty impressive. Being able to do this is something that is, in today's world, is pretty meaningful. Here you see now that at minute, I would say 16, everything's actually up and running. And we're basically done with this particular restore. I know that based on my experiences in the data center and some of the things we've done in the past, it's very challenging. It's very tough to actually achieve a full data center recovery of this type of magnitude, this particular approach. And one of the things that we've as VMware sort of users and customers that have been challenged with in the past is being able to bring up all the different appliances and all the different management stacks that may exist within the infrastructure, because it's challenging just simply because we have to restore so many VMs, so many appliances, so many different databases, but do it correctly in time in a way that it matches the business requirements.